The lesson.
Oh, yeah.
All right, here we go. We got the man 24 Karat Kev with us from Sydney, bro. How you doing?
I'm good, thanks, bro. How you doing? Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for taking the time to come through and make it happen. We've been going back and forth for a few weeks, and yeah, we finally made it happen, dude. So thank you very much.
No, it's all good. Anytime. I'm happy to be on. Happy to talk about anything. So.
All right. So look, for those who may not know, your position in the game is not as an artist as such, but I guess more of a behind the scenes, person, for lack of a better term. You are an A&R at Warner, as well as you write books, you're a journalist. I think you're a man of a few hats. And that's a big part of the reason why we got you on here. I think that you are somebody that the artists in the Oz rap game really respect your opinion, your advice. For lack of a better comparison, I sort of look at you as someone like a How, in the sense that you're the guy that has the networks, the access, the advice, and you can help put people in the right direction. So I thought it was important to get you on because your words hold a lot of value. Now, I guess for myself, the first time I caught on to you, I think from memory, was when you were doing those Filter Zone interviews. I think maybe the first one you did. Which one was the first one that you did?
The first one was Husky.
Bang, yeah. And I reckon that was that's where I first caught on to you. And then you had like a few more. I reckon I've watched all of them, or pretty much all of them. And then off the back of that, I've just seen you pretty much anywhere and everywhere where there's shit going on. Whether it be at live events, whether it be in interviews, you're just like a guy that's kind of everywhere. Now, before even getting into where you're at now, for you, like, where did you grow up, and how did the whole hip hop thing, begin for you? Like, what were some of your influences and what got you into the whole pocket?
Yeah, so I grew up in Maroubra, which is, for the people outside of Sydney, it's in the southeastern suburbs. A couple of rappers from there, Kobe D, he grew up like 30 seconds away from me, sort of thing, but we didn't meet till we were way older. But yeah, I went to school around there. Most people think I'm from the western suburbs. I'm not from the western suburbs. I'm actually Maroubra, born and bred. Lived there most of my life. I live in the city now, but lived there most of my life. And then I guess when I was really young, when I was actually about 9 years old, I got a scholarship to a school for creative writing. So for whatever reason, I was really talented at writing since I was a kid, and I got a scholarship to that school from year 5 until year 12. So all then, like, writing was kind of my main focus at high school. Obviously it's a bit unusual, for an Asian kid to be good at English and drama, but terrible at maths and science. It's just like you know what I mean? My mum was just like, what the fuck? But yeah, so I've always had a really big talent for writing, and from a very young age. And then I actually graduated from school and I went to uni, and I was actually doing 2 degrees. I was doing public relations and I was doing law as well. And then maybe like 3 years into my degree, like, I was just like, fuck, it's pretty bad, eh? Like, I can't see myself really doing this for the rest of my life, because the plan was, I'll go to uni, do my law degree, become a lawyer, do this, do that. And then, 3 years in, I just kind of got tired of my whole degree. And then at the time, I had this blog on Tumblr, like, that's how it's showing my age. I was on Tumblr, and I used to write like rap reviews just for fun. I used to show them to my friends, and my friends would say, oh yeah, you should look into doing it as a job. And I was like, yeah, why not? So yeah, halfway through my degree, which would have been about 2010, I started reaching out to a lot of magazines around at the time. So back then, it was less video stuff. It was more just like, you had In The Mix, Faster Louder, The Brag, all these kind of websites, publications that were doing music stuff. And I was just doing it for free tickets, bro. Like, I used to just review, Stereosonic, and they'd give me 4 tickets. And, you know, back then, you know, being 20 years old, the tickets were $120, $150, you know, so $600, you know, you and your mates would go to Stereosonic and do whatever. And yeah, I was just doing it for fun for a while, you know, just for tickets. And then after that, I just somehow got a job. And then started just writing about music, like really heavily. This is from about 2011 onwards. And back then when it started, it was more kind of like, you know, obviously house, electro, dubstep, all that stuff was kind of the biggest thing. You know, Australia had a really big, huge dance festival culture. So it was more about that. But, you know, I've always had a really big love for hip hop as well. Since I was about like, probably about 14, 15. You know, first of all, it was metal and hardcore, and then 14, 15, I really started getting into hip hop, and especially when I turned 18, started going clubbing and, you know, got into hip hop way more. So it was really kind of like, yeah, those early 2010s, I really started combining my love of hip hop with like my talent for writing, and that's just how it came together. And then just did one thing to another, and then just somehow, yeah, still doing it like 10 years later. I don't know how, like it just just happened, yeah.
Now, when you talk about how, you know, at around 14, 15 is when you got into hip hop, and before that you were into, you know, like the hardcore scene. What particular songs or artists, or what was it that made you become a fan of hip hop and sort of leave the other stuff alone?
Yeah, so when I first got into metal, like I had an older brother. So my older brother, he was 4 years older than me, right? So around the 2000s, very late 90s, early 2000s, you know, he would have been, you know, 13, 14 years old, and I was 4 years younger than him, so I would have been 9 or 10 years old. And, you know, at the turn of the millennium, all the big bands, the biggest metal bands in the world, we're talking about Korn, Limp Bizkit, Slipknot, all these bands were incorporating hip hop with metal, you know what I mean? Even if you listen to the old Limp Bizkit records, they got Exhibit on songs, you know, they got Method Man on songs. Korn had Nas on a song. So I was always accustomed to hip hop that way. And then, you know, Eminem and Dr. Dre would be in the Limp Bizkit videos, and, you know, I kind of liked all the big artists of the time, you know, just the classic ones like, you know, 50 Game, Eminem, Dre, all that sort of shit that, you know, everyone who's even casually into hip hop loves. And then after that, kind of in the mid 2000s, that's when the hardcore scene in Australia was really popping. And hardcore kids back then, like in the same way that hardcore kids now love Posse Shot, back then hardcore kids were really into you know, Mobb Deep's, Capone Noriega's, Jedi Mind Tricks, Immortal Technique, Nonfiction, like all those sort of acts. So I think that's when I delved into hip hop a bit more. The old New York stuff combined with that kind of like whatever people want to call it, like conspiracy, fucking weird, like high progressive East Coast rap stuff. That's when I really started getting into hip hop. And then, yeah, like I said, when I turned 18, you know, all the club stuff, you know, to like in the early 2010s, you know, my favorite shit was Waka Flocka Flame, Gucci Mane, you know, stuff produced by Lex Luger, and then stuff produced by DJ Mustard, and that's how I got into more of that side of hip hop. So it was kind of like I loved all the really big artists, then I went super underground, and then I was more about the clubbing stuff. And then nowadays it's just like I like everything. But yeah, it all started from me listening to Fred Durst rap, he's like the worst, like not a good rapper, but you know, he's the gateway for a lot of people like me, you know, who are into heavy music and then got into hip hop later. Yeah.
And then so, you know, that's the transition between hardcore into US hip hop. And then when did you catch an ear to Australian rap, and how did you get into that pocket?
Yeah, so Australian stuff I always loved. Again, it's kind of like a similar thing actually. Like I love this, like all the biggest stuff. So, you know, Bliss and Essos, Hilltop Hoods, Funkors at the time, you know, they were really popular. And then I still love like hardcore stuff. I wasn't into that much of in the early days, except I do remember like, it must have been the mid 2000s or something, bro. Like I remember picking up Stealth magazine. One of my mates is actually a mad engineer right now. He engineers a lot of dance music, but I went to school with him. He gave me a copy of Stealth magazine. I was looking through there and I found, you know, ad for LC Murderous Metaphors, you know, and then that kind of sent me into that trajectory of hip hop. as well as kind of like the more traditional kind of flagship Oz, big hip hop acts. And then when I started doing the journalism thing, the first guys that I kind of met from the scene were the One Day guys. So we're talking, Jackie Onassis back then, Spit Syndicate, Horror Show, which was a trip out for me. Horror Show I was a massive fan of, all when I was a kid and through high school, and then meeting them. And, I still work with those guys today. Nick Loopy and Adit from Horror Show I still work with on a pretty frequent basis. Obviously he manages SPANIAN and Loopy manages CHILLINIT. So yeah, those were kind of the first guys that I kind of worked with in the hip hop space that I was a real fan of and I met. And then I guess underground wise, the first guy that I really met was like Forte. This would have been, like years and years ago. I actually met him at a YG show, like, like years back. Yeah, someone introduced me to him, and then that kind of sent me into the more kind of like, the newer wave of the underground stuff. But yeah, it was just more, back then it was more, Bliss and SO Hoods, all the stuff that most people like. And then, LC I've always been a massive fan of too,
Now, for me personally, Lyrical Commission, The Stage Is Set, is probably my favourite Australian rap album of all time to date. And when I did a bit of research, I think you pretty much have the same sort of opinion.
Yeah, man, like that was like, especially what I was saying before, coming up on that style of hip hop, Outer Space, Army of the Pharaohs, Jenna Mind Tricks, obviously there's a lot of parallels. LC had the track with Self-Titled, and Brad Strait had the track with Outer Space and that. So yeah, for me to find something like that, like locally, was really kind of like so good, you know what I mean? And that album is just, still to this day, I saw Brad Strait play with Posse Shot a couple of weeks ago, and he played Carlton United Tragedy, and that was just like a bit of a mind-blown moment, Even meeting Brad, I don't get starstruck that often. Like, I'm saying the three people I've ever got starstruck off was Kim Kardashian, Pete Evans, because I'm a big fan of My Kitchen Rules, Pete Evans, and Brad Strait, bro. Like, I met him a couple of weeks back at the Posse Shot show. One of the mutual friends introduced us at the show, and, such a nice guy. Like, obviously I've always said, if LC wrote Hate the Scene, I was like, bro, I probably feel like they're talking about me in 2022, you know what I mean? There's always that, obviously I work with a lot more commercial acts and stuff like that, so there's always that part of me which is like, oh, I don't know, like if it's going to be weird or anything. But yeah, I met Brad like at the show, and I've hung out with him a couple of times since. When I go down to Melbourne, always link up with, Carney Muscles and Denter and those guys, and Brad's around, and we had Korean barbecue like 2 weeks ago, and such a nice guy, like such a nice guy, and it's fully starstruck the first time, but now it's cool, like we chat on Instagram or whatever, and yeah, really nice guy. And that's just like a bit of a full circle moment for me, listening to LC back then, and then actually getting to meet Brad and chop it up with him is just crazy to me, yeah.
Now, one of the most iconic things that I feel Brad's ever done, or that, in Oz rap history to date, was his single Monopoly. Where, he that was basically directed at Obese at the time. Now, when I first heard Monopoly, I was just like blown away for many reasons. Like, obviously the production, the bars, and just the fact that, him and his camp were just going head to head with like the powerhouse of Oz rap at the time. So it was a very big deal for me, and I guess for everyone that was a fan. Do you recall when Strut dropped Monopoly, and if so, like what you thought of it when it first came out?
Honestly, I wasn't like, back then I was into the hip hop, but I wasn't really around like the politics of really what was going on behind the scenes. So I can't really speak on like, I obviously thought it was a mad track, but like I didn't have the intricacies of like what was going on at the time, you know what I mean? Like, I think back then Obese were they still dropping like Cursor records and stuff? Like I didn't even remember what was happening back then. I remember hearing the track and thinking, yeah, this is sick, but like in terms of the impact and stuff, I don't think I really realized until like a lot later, because like I wasn't really that deep into it, you know what I mean? Like I was still, when did that track come out? It's probably like 2006, 7?
Yeah, I reckon 7.
Yeah, so I would have been 16. So yeah, like, I mean, back then, like, yeah, I wasn't into it that heavy. Like, I was into it, but I wasn't really going to shows and stuff yet, you know, because I was 15 or 16, you know. So yeah, I think it was only a bit later that I fully realized, like, and even now when you, like, if we're talking about LC or Bradstrap more broadly, you know, it's only kind of like, you know, this big resurgence we've had in like boom bap or more kind of like lyrical driven hip hop, you know. It's sometimes it just takes a couple of years for you to fully see like how much impact, you know, an artist has. So yeah, it's cool to see, man. Yeah, for sure.
Now, for me, the first time I came across Lyrical Commission was the joint with J Red, Custom Made, and because I have a DJ background in particular, that really hit. I mean, the beat was dope, the raps were dope, and just the way that they kind of made Jay stand out like a rapper, you know, because often you've got the rappers in the front, the DJ in the back. He came through like one of the shining stars of the group, and I was just like, wow, this is incredible. And then I heard the whole album, and I'm blown away front to back. Now, for you personally, is there a particular song off that album that really kind of made you go, yeah, this is it, I'm following these guys?
Yeah, I think I heard Murderous Metaphors before I heard Stage Your Set. Because I found the ad. I remember the cover of the magazine had Method Man and Redman on it. It was Stealth Mag, if anyone remembers the issue. But it had an ad for Murderous Metaphors in there, and it was actually Sync Quick off that EP, which is just Strut and Balance on it. But that one, something about the beat and yeah, just the way that they're going back to back off the verses was crazy to me. And then off Stage Your Set, it's probably just like, yeah, Press Release or Carlton United Tragedy is kind of like the ones off that record for me personally, yeah.
As you are catching on to the Australian stuff, and obviously that's off the back of being introduced to the American stuff, at this point in time, you're already writing for these magazines, or you haven't started writing for magazines yet?
Nah, I was still in high school then. It was probably about 5 years later that I started doing the journalism stuff. Yeah, so 2000... The Aussie stuff was probably like when I was like, you know, 14, 15, 16, and then I didn't start writing till I was about 20, 21, and then properly in like when I was like 22. So yeah, it's probably like a good 5-6 year gap there, yeah.
Okay, so by the time you've started writing, you're already into Australian rap, but the first things that you started writing about were not Australian rap.
No, it wasn't. I mean, I always supported like the One Day Boys and stuff. Outside of LC and stuff, like the underground, I wasn't like, I knew Fort and Curse obviously like around that time, but you know, and all the Hustle Hard artists, but it was more kind of like American stuff purely because like back then I was still doing it for fun. You know, when I first started, I got a job and stuff, but it wasn't like that serious. And I had a friend who, she actually did the PR for most of the rappers that came to Australia. So back then, you know, being 20 years old or whatever, and, you know, you're getting a chance to interview, you know, Craig David or, or like just, you know, just like ASAP Ferg, like the most ridiculous artists. And it's just like more for me, it was just like fun because I get to meet my heroes. You know, I met The Game, you know, like Fat Joe. I got to chop it up with him about DITC. You know what I mean? It's just like childhood type stuff. And it was like more, I was doing it just, you know, yeah, it was a part-time job, a bit of spare money. I was still working in retail, you know, a bit of spare money. And it's like, oh, I get to meet my heroes and that's kind of it. There was no like, it's not like now where I have kind of like a clear vision of like what that could actually entail, like doing the interviews and stuff and kind of bringing up the scene. It was never viewed like that back then. It was more just like, oh, cool. I get free tickets to gigs. I get to meet the guys I grew up listening to and have a bit of fun and make a bit of money. Like, and that was it. So I was never really focused that much on the Australian stuff in the early days, besides like, yeah, doing stuff with the One Day Boys and stuff just because they were mates and, you know, they were throwing mad parties back then and doing whatever. So yeah, it wasn't really until a couple of years later that I really started honing in the Australian scene and really trying to, I guess, elevate the scene in a sense. Yeah, that was probably around 2016. I started really focusing on the Australian stuff, yeah.
focusing on the Australian stuff, you mentioned some of the names that you got to interview, and like I've got a few names here. It says you interviewed Kendrick Lamar in 2012, Kim Kardashian in 2014, as well as ASAP Ferg, DJ Khaled, and Ice Cube.
Ice Cube, yeah.
And his son, O'Shea Jackson Jr. You mentioned Fat Joe, and there's obviously probably a bunch of guys that I'm missing out. Now, one of the big ones that stood out for me was Kim Kardashian. Because she's not a musician, but it's a very, very big celebrity name. How did that come about, and can you recall what that experience was like at that time?
Yeah, so the whole Kim thing came about because, so back when I first started writing as well, it was kind of 50-50 what I was doing. I was doing 50% music, but I was doing a lot of fashion and stuff. And back then, sneaker culture was kind of blowing up and yada, yada, yada. So basically, I was in touch with like a lot of the fashion publicists at the time. And one of the PR agencies, they look after a bunch of stuff like, big fashion brands or whatever. They were doing PR for Kim Kardashian's fashion line, which she was launching at the time. So they sent an email over to us saying, hey, Kim Kardashian is doing a in-store appearance at Parramatta Westfields. Can you do an article about it and, generate some publicity or whatever? I was like, yeah, sweet. Just did it. Sent the article back to him. And I just said, as like kind of like an off comment, I was like, if she has any time on ground, like, let me know. And they were like, yeah, we'll let you know. And, literally didn't think anything of it. A couple of days later, my boss texted me and said, check your emails. I checked my email and they said in there, you have been approved for a 5-minute interview with Kim Kardashian. And I was like, you're fucking joking me. Like, you know what I mean? Like what you, 2014. So I was like, yeah, like 24 years old, like barely knew what I was doing. Like went to the Park Hyatt Hotel, which is like a 5-star hotel under the Sydney Harbour Bridge, walked in there, like security, got frisked 3 times, like metal detected, walked in this room and, it's like a full glitzy room. And she just comes and sits down like literally 1 meter away from me. And I was just like, what the fuck? This is so weird, eh? And obviously, because it's like a big celebrity, I had to flag all the questions with the publicist. And then, so I couldn't ask anything really that off topic or anything like that. It was more just about her fashion line. And she told me she had 3 Gucci visors. I was like, that's cool. Like she told me a couple of other things. Finished the interview and then, got a photo with her, which is still on my Insta. People think I photoshopped that photo. I'm like, nah, it's 100% real. It was just taken on like an iPhone 2 or whatever was out in 2014, an iPhone 3 or whatever. So it's not that clear, but it's definitely me and her. And then she was really nice. She was sweet, very articulate, knows what she's doing. She switched on. Yeah, she was really cool. Like I said this before actually on the internet. Like I've met Sydney rappers who have a bigger ego than her. Like she was just straight up. She was cool. Yeah, and then finished the interview, and then that night went and saw Kanye. I think it was at the Sydney Entertainment Centre, which doesn't exist anymore, but I'm pretty sure he played there. And then she was up in the stands, and he was there for the Yeezus tour, and he played all the bangers off there. He played Black Skinhead, Blood on the Leaves, some older stuff, and it's just a crazy, crazy day. And I think in those early days, like that's kind of what kept me going, like just getting to do really cool shit. Like I said, like the plan was to kind of quit, when I turned 25 or whatever, and kind of do a serious job or whatever. So those were kind of like my last years of having fun before I went to a serious job. So I was just doing funny shit, and then 7-8 years later, here we are. So,
and another big one that was very impressive that I didn't know about is before the Kim Kardashian interview, you interviewed Kendrick Lamar in 2012. Now, Kendrick in 2012, I mean, you would have been obviously relatively young, and he was just, from memory, it's around then when he was just starting to pop. Again, how did that come about, and how was that experience for you at that particular point in time?
Yeah, you're exactly right. So that happened because, back then there wasn't, nowadays it's like there's so many voices in the hip hop media space, like so many people have podcasts or blogs or whatever. Like back then it was a lot different. Like the scene was a lot different. And I guess there was only like really a handful of writers that were doing that stuff really. And as soon as I established those relationships with like the labels or the publicists, it was kind of easy for me to get a lot of those interviews, to be honest. So back then, my friend Katie, she works at Apple now, but she was one of the head publicists at Universal. And I remember she told me, hey, we have 3 interview slots for Kendrick when he comes to Sydney. Do you want one? And this was when he was touring Australia just straight off the back of Good Kid. So he had Section 80. Good Kid had just dropped. And then when it dropped, it obviously went crazy. And they upgraded the Sydney show from the Metro Theatre to the Enmore Theatre, sold out straight away. So there was like so much hype behind it. And I remember just being like, fuck, this is cool. But obviously, like back then, I had no idea of how much of an influential legacy artist Kendrick was going to be. Like, you know, he'd released a mad EP and he now just dropped like an amazing album. I think back then, like The Game and Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre, they were kind of like doing a passing the torch thing to Kendrick at the time. It was kind of like, you know, all the West Coast legends were kind of being like, you know, he's next up. But obviously he wasn't like as solidified or as like immortal as he is nowadays, you know? So I was still going into it like kind of like, oh yeah, this is cool. Like, you know, he's an upcoming artist. It's exciting, yada, yada, yada. He was staying at the Hilton on George Street, just up from Town Hall in Sydney. Yeah, and I remember we walked in the hotel lobby and met Katie, my friend. She was there, and she's like, "Oh, Kendrick's coming down," and I was like, "Okay, cool." And he kind of came downstairs just in like sweatpants and was like, "Hey," and I was like, "Oh fuck, hey, like how you doing?" Like so weird, like just in the middle of the Hilton, like with all these people around everywhere. And then we were kind of like, "Oh, where are we going to do the interview?" And he was like, "Oh, let's just go back up to my hotel room. It's quiet there." And I was like, "All right, sweet." So me, Katie, one of my friends came, his manager. We all were just going up in this lift, and it was going up to like the 35th floor or something ridiculous, and it was just like dead quiet in the lift. I was like, this is so fucking awkward. But then when we started the interview, it was mad. Like, you know, obviously Good Kid being still, you know, my favorite Kendrick album to this day, being such an amazing album. There's lots to talk about. He was really generous with his time, generous with his energy. Yeah, it's just really cool, man. It's just really another one of the moments I look back on. And then I remember after the interview, I asked him, can I get a photo? And he was like, yeah, of course. And then I remember his manager went to take the photo, but he couldn't figure out how to open the blinds. And then the lighting, he was like, no, the lighting's bad. We have to open the blinds. And he was figuring out how to press it, but then couldn't figure out how to open it. And then he turned on the light, and then he jumped on the bed, and then he was taking photos from like all different angles. And like, he was like, oh, is that one good enough? And I'm like, yeah, it's cool. And then I remember I was with a friend, and then I was kind of like, oh, do you want to get a photo with Kendrick as well? And she was like, because she came straight from work, and she was like, no, I don't have any makeup on. I look shit. Like, I don't want to get it. And obviously now, like, she's like spewing because it's like, fuck, you know, he's a legend, like a living legend, you know, arguably the best rapper in the world. And she's spewing she never took that chance to get a photo with Kendrick. But yeah, it's another one of them moments you look back on. I actually interviewed him 2 years after that. On the phone though, he had a deal with Reebok. It was his deal before Nike. He had the Reeboks that had red on one shoe and blue on one shoe. And then yeah, I interviewed him for that. But the first one was definitely the craziest one. Oh, and I remember the last question I asked him. I don't know why I asked this. Out of all the questions I could ask, the last question I asked him, I was like, "Oh, are you gonna play Fucking Problems?" Which was A$AP Rocky's track that featured him and 2 Chainz and Drake. And I was like, are you going to play Fucking Problems? And he was like, at the show tonight? And he was like, we'll see. And then I went to the show at the Enmore, and he actually played it. And, you know, in my mind, like, if I'm going to, you know, be a bit self-absorbed here, he played it because I asked him to, you know?
You know, it's this 2012 to 2016-ish sort of period that you've predominantly focused on, you know, writing about US artists. And then you said, then it kind of merged over into the Aussie stuff. Now, that's around that 2016 period. And in 2016, you actually dropped a song with a film clip called Chinatown Champ. That's correct?
That is absolutely fucking correct.
Now, for me, that was that came out of left field when we were doing the research, because I don't know you as an artist. Like we said at the start, I know you as the behind the scenes guy. So tell us a little bit about what that was all about. Like, is that a point in time where you obviously considered becoming a rapper, and what influenced you to have a go at that? And is that the only 24 Karat Kev song that's out there, or is there more stuff out there?
Yeah, so yeah, it's funny you asked about that. It's because like a lot of people that know me now, they have no idea about that song. They have no reference point. You know, a lot of the kids that know me now from SPANIAN or OneFour, you know, they're 18 years old, and you know, back in 2016 they would have been 10 or whatever. You know, they have no reference point for that sort of stuff. So it's like funny that you asked me about that. But yeah, basically, I guess journalism-wise, I always had a personality, like I had a brand, like I was a very front-facing kind of journalist, you know what I mean? Even though I was kind of behind the scenes, you know, I was really active on socials and trying to push my own brand into becoming like, not an influencer, but just being known, you know, for stuff outside of just, you know, my byline on an article or whatever. Around 2015, 2016, my friend Adam, he's in a techno duo called Word Life, but he does a lot of work with Heaps Decent. For people who don't know that, it's kind of like an initiative. They go around to remote communities or juvenile justice centers, and they teach kids how to rap and how to make music. And, you know, a lot of the young guys like Rops, for example, you know, one of his first, you know, recorded songs was through Heaps Decent, you know, and when I interviewed him, he shouted out all the Heaps Decent guys and said, you know, that was a really formative step in me pursuing music, because these guys were coming around to, you know, the juvies or the jails and, you know, teaching us how to make beats, how to record and doing all this. So yeah, my mate Adam, he was inclined to the hip hop stuff because he'd been doing the Heaps Decent stuff, and I'm pretty sure he still does it nowadays. So shout out to him. But you know, it's a really important thing that he's doing. He was outside of techno. He was doing the hip hop stuff through that, and you know, we were just friends. So one day he was like, "Come down to the studio," and you know, he was just playing me a couple of beats, and we were just joking around. And he was like, "Why don't you record a song?" And I was like, "What the fuck am I gonna say?" You know, it's not like I'm not street. I'm not like, you know, doing this or doing that. You know, I don't even really know what I'd rap about. And we just flirted with the idea of just doing like a joke song, essentially. Like, you know, people were like, "Oh, is it a joke song?" And I'm like, in my first 4 bars, I compared myself to Jay-Z. Like, if you don't understand that it's a joke, like, I don't know what to tell you, but you know what I mean? The whole thing was so stupid, and I'm sure people have seen the video clip. You know, it's ridiculous. You know, all my mates are in it, and we're doing dumb shit, lying in jacuzzis and doing this and doing that. So yeah, we just decided to drop this song as a joke. It was essentially just a test to push my brand and just see how stupid it could become. And you know, like, obviously I had a lot of ties in the journalism world back then. So, you know, I was sending the song to my mates who wrote at different magazines, and I'm pretty sure like Acclaim covered it, Purple Sneakers covered it, Pile Rats covered it. I think Vice did a thing on it. Like, it was just so stupid. Like, it was just so dumb. And then it kind of, importantly, like my first ever journalism job, I worked with a guy who runs Brown Cardigan. So when Brown Cardigan shared it, that was when it really kind of started taking a life of of its own and started going crazy, like as a bit of a meme or whatever. And then yeah, we just dropped the song. And then I remember back then, like, guys who were using their real Facebook profiles to comment underneath, and I had no idea who they were. And then now looking back on it, it was Mitchos the Menace, it was Husky, it was Kid Curve, it was all those guys who were commenting, but off their real Facebook profile. So I had no idea who these guys were. You know what I mean? Because like back then, yeah, like I said, I only really knew Fort. Fort was like pretty much the only guy I knew from the underground on a personal level. So yeah, all those guys started commenting on it, and then I got booked for a gig at Club 77. They paid me $500 for a 15-minute set, but I had one song. So Phil Fresh, who's another Sydney rapper, I paid him $100 to do 2 songs and Hype Man for me. I paid Ness, who's another one of my day one friends. She DJ'd for me for $100, and then I kept 300. And then Phil did 2 songs. I played 1 song, and that was my one and only live performance. Apparently, a promoter wanted to book me for Designer, but then Ivan Ooze or some shit got the support, and then there was some sort of police situation where they couldn't book. I don't know. It was weird, but they were going to book me for a Designer support. And I was like, this is just so stupid. Like, and looking back on it, like, obviously the whole thing was just a piss take. But like I said, you know, that was how a lot of those guys in the underground knew me, like originally, you know, like they knew me off that song. And I remember like the first time I met like Husky and those boys, they were all like, fuck man, we used to bump your song. Like that was crazy. And I'm like, it was so stupid. Like the whole thing was ridiculous. And now it's not even on YouTube anymore because it was on my ex-girlfriend's YouTube page. And then when we broke up, she deleted it off that, but it's on Facebook. So anyone that wants to find it, it's somewhere on Facebook. If you search hard enough, you can find it. I kind of like that it's hidden now. You know what I mean? Like if people really want to find it, then they'll find it. Yeah.
And so was that the only song that you recorded and released and that was it?
Yeah, bro. And you don't know how hard that was for me to record. That was like 32 bars or something. And by like the 18th bar, I was like, I have nothing to say. Like I literally have nothing to say. And Adam was on the decks being like, no. Like say something more. And then, you know, like eventually I just wrote down the most ridiculous shit I could think of. And then it became what it was. And yeah, like it just became so, like still to this day, bro, like people at work and are just like, they don't believe that it happened. They're just like, where do I find it? I'm like, if you find it, you find it. You know, if you can't, you can't. Like, that's it. Yeah. That's the only song. That's it.
And then so because you've dropped one song and now, you know, it's caught on, you know, people are writing about it, people are sharing it, people are commenting on it, you're getting booked, you know, for this show, and now other people are maybe looking to book you. That didn't at any point in time make you think, oh, maybe I should continue this? Or you knew straight away, like, I've done it and I'm out?
Yeah. I mean, people still today ask for when the sequel's coming. I'm like, it's been like 6 years, man. Let it go. I've moved on. I probably could have, but then again, like, the whole thing was, like I said, it was basically like a joke mixed with a branding exercise. You know what I'm saying? Like I was never out there trying to become a legitimate artist. I know that some artists have done that. Like, you know, Rich Brian's a really good example of someone who released kind of like a meme-y big song and then became a really legitimate artist. Obviously he's like the biggest Asian hip hop artist in the world now. But yeah, nah, like I didn't really want to go down the joke route again. And also like back then I was kind of like building steam with the writing stuff. So it was kind of like, I probably could have done both, but like also I was kind of like, yeah, like, I don't know if it would have been genuine if I was doing it. Like, it's just a piss take. And you know when a piss take goes for like a bit too long, it's just kind of gets a bit like, oh God, he's still gone. So yeah, I was happy to leave it at one song back then. Looking back, like, I'm like, yeah, like, I probably could have done maybe a bit more and then evolved into like a DJ Khaled kind of like orchestra. Like, you know, people ask for if I'm going to do a project and I'm like, I've always said, if I'm going to do it, it's going to be like a Khaled style project where I'm getting producers, singers, and rappers that I like and kind of throwing them together and then seeing what happens. You know what I mean? That's kind of where I would see any sort of musical involvement for me now. But yeah, no, I think I'll leave it at one. A lot of people took it the wrong way. A lot of people took the track the wrong way. And I'm like, fuck, if you can't take a joke, you can't take a joke, whatever, you know? But I'm happy to leave it at one, yeah.
And so why the title Chinatown Champ?
I guess back then, yeah, there was just not that much Asian representation in hip hop, really. I mean, nowadays it's a lot better. You know, we got 1300, 3K, Yellow Boy Tommy, Crazy Cam. I'm sure I'm missing some others, but yeah, it's a lot healthier nowadays. But back then, it was more just like, yeah, I don't know. Didn't see that many Asian rappers and not that many Asian rappers, especially with like this sort of accent. So I just thought it was funny. And it was like we got a really big Asian population in Australia, and also geographically, we're so close there. And I really feel like, you know, a lot of rappers nowadays, when they think about breaking, you know, traditionally it was always the US. And then, you know, obviously with drill and grime, you know, popping off, you know, in the more recent years, people have more been looking towards the UK. But people don't realize how much of a massive market Asia is. You know, we got such a huge Asian population here. Geographically, it's a lot easier to tour there. And you know, that's a huge market. You know, you see all the K-pop stuff coming through in recent years as well. Even Australian guys like Rule. I know he's not strictly hip hop, but you know, he's managed by hip hop guys. Rule, who's like, you know, the big R&B pop whatever singer, you know, when I'm pretty sure he's like gold or platinum in Korea. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I really think it's important for people to think about, you know, Australia and, you know, our proximity to Asia and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm just like putting it on for the Asians. Yeah.
Now, I guess on that topic, and I meant to ask you at the beginning of the interview. Now, you've been Asian growing up in Australia. When you were younger, did you experience any sort of like racial issues being Asian growing up in Australia, or that was never really a thing for you?
Oh, for sure I did, for sure. I think like most Asian kids who grew up in the 90s, bro, like we definitely had some sort of confusion as to where we fit in. You know, this is the era of Pauline Hanson, you know, even John Howard, you know, literally telling us to go back to where we came from. It's like, what the fuck? You know, I think every Asian kid grew up for a long time being confused about where they fit in and who they were. You know what I mean? And my parents have even said to me, like, I feel really sorry for you because, you know, you're never going to be part of either. You're never going to be completely part of either camp, you know? You're never going to be accepted fully as Australian, which is just realistic, you know? You're never really going to be fully accepted as Australian, and you haven't got that cultural tie to your Asian roots because you grew up here. You know what I'm saying? And I don't think it's a bad thing at all, but I can see where they're coming from, you know, because my parents were immigrants and they came here, you know, in their 20s, obviously for a better life and stuff like that. So yeah, I definitely think there was like a lot, like it was never hectic to the point where I was getting bashed on the street or whatever, you know, nothing like that. But I just think it's like a general feeling of when you're a child and when you're a teenager of not wanting to look like the way that you wanted or not wanting to sound like the way that you wanted, even down to the food that you ate. Like, it's just a very confusing time, you know, and it took me a long time to get a grasp of that. And I think now especially, like, a lot of things have changed, you know, obviously, you know, that's why I'm so big on Asian representation, you know what I mean? Because it really takes you to see that to actually believe that, you know, be proud of who you are, you know, and there's Crazy Rich Asians, obviously, you know, Bling Empire on Netflix, you know, you have, you know, Asian rappers, you know, I started managing the hardcore band Speed, you know, like they're, you know, 4 of the members are Asian, and it's the same mission. We have the same mission, you know, we want to see people that look like us, you know, on a world stage, and, you know, that's going to inspire the next generation. So yeah, it's just a weird time. And then when I was growing up, and then obviously all the COVID stuff, there was kind of like another wave of that, and pretty sure Pauline Hanson's still in the fucking Senate. So like, who knows, you know, like, I feel like if you're a minority in Australia, it's, you know, it's almost like, you know, every 5 years, it feels like there's like another target to focus on. So yeah, but all you can do is, you know, be proud of who you are and just stand on your own 2 feet, and that's it. Yeah.
And for you, these, I guess, challenges and experiences that you've had along the way, being Asian in Australia, has that, you know, how has that shaped you to be the person that you are today? Like, what sort of impact has that had on you?
I guess it's just like I'm very conscious about like supporting other Asian people in the space. You know, just last week they launched the Australian branch of EST Media, which is kind of like it's like an Asian focused. It's basically to tell the stories of Asian youths around the world, and they just opened an Australian chapter. You know what I mean? And I think like something like that's so important because it's like not only the artists I want to support, you know, I go out there and I support 1300 and all those boys for sure, but you know, all the videographers behind the scenes, all the producers, you know, 99 Hertz producing OneFour shit now, you know, and you know, he's an Asian kid from out the Northwest. So, you know, from even in, you know, the labels, you know, the A&Rs, you know, managers, promoters, like everything, you know, like I said, you know, Australia is pretty much part of Asia, and I definitely feel like it's important for our stories to be told, and you know, having those people in the right positions of influence to make sure that, you know, all of us can come up, you know what I mean? And it's not just about Asians at the end of the day, you know, obviously like I'm Asian and that's my passion, but you know, all people of color, you know, I think that's one of the best things that's happened since this latest wave of you know, hip hop from Australia going global. It's that, you know, people are really starting to become proud of not only their own culture and their heritage, but being proud of being Australian, you know what I'm saying? So, and, you know, acts like OneFour, people are like, oh yeah, they're just another drill act who rap about, you know, stabbing and doing this and doing that. But whether you like it or not, they're changing the global perception of Australia, what Australians look like, what Australians sound like. You know, people are oblivious to the fact that there's even a, you know, Samoan community here. And again, like if we're going to branch off that, you know, SPANIAN doing his food series and going out to, you know, a little Polynesian restaurant and putting that on his huge platform, you know, that's so important. You know, SPANIAN isn't Polynesian, but him doing that is going to mean so much for that, not only that business, but that culture as a whole. So yeah, I definitely feel like this is the time when, you know, so many people are telling their own stories proudly and not being ashamed of who they are or where they come from. And I think that's one of the best things about hip hop and the explosion that we're having now.
That was 2016 when you dropped Chinatown Champ. It's around that period that you've started writing about Aussie artists. 2017, you interviewed Craig David. And then I've got listed here 2018, you did an interview with the Kid Leroy in Sydney. 2 questions. Number 1, how did the Kid Leroy interview come about and how was that experience? Obviously, he wasn't the superstar back then that he is right now. And B, was that your first Australian artist interview or you'd done a few before that one?
Oh, no, I'd definitely done a few before that. I'd done, like I was saying before, kind of like all the One Day Boys, Forte, I'd interviewed. By 2018, I probably interviewed even like some of the other guys like Chill and Husky and stuff. I'm not sure, it's like that whole period kind of blurs in my head, but yeah, no, it definitely wasn't the first Australian interview I did. I was kind of, 2017, 2018 when I was tapping more into the Australian stuff. Kid Leroy happened before this latest wave of kind of like, you know, the guys who blew up from 50-50 or get bodied or anything like that. The kind of artists who were kind of taking it to that next level, it was kind of like Manu Crooks, Blessed, who was maybe even called Miracle back then, I'm not sure, but those kind of guys. And, you know, I was a massive, massive fan of that whole sound when that came out. You know, Manu Crooks' stuff slapped on records, slapped in the clubs, and he's still doing his thing now, so shout out to him. Manu was having a launch party for his first EP. The Mood Forever EP. He was having a launch for that. And I remember I rocked up to the party. It was at the studios out in Alexandria. I rocked up to the party and I was walking up the stairs and this little kid came up to me and like he was just walking around and doing whatever. And I said to my friend being like, oh, this must be some record exec's son or like, you know, just a young fan of Manu Crooks or something. You know, someone probably brought along their little brother. Like, you know what I mean? Had no idea who he was. And then I remember that there was heaps of rooms in the studio. This was the DB studios back in the day. There was like maybe 5 or 6 rooms, and then it was too noisy. So I went into one of the rooms. I was sitting down. I was making a call on my phone, and then I hung up the phone. And the Kid Leroy walked in. Had no idea who he was. And he was like, "Oh, you're Kev, yeah?" And I was like, "Yeah. What's going on? How are you?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, no, I love your track Chinatown Champs." And I was like, "Yeah, how the hell did you hear that? Because, yeah, you're like 10. You're like 10 years old or something." He was probably 13. I don't know how old he was. He's probably 13 or something or whatever. And then we just started chopping it up. And I didn't even know he rapped at that point and then said bye to him, whatever. And then I think after that, over the next couple of months, you saw him hanging out with, you know, that crew, Manu Crooks, B-Wise, quite a lot. And then he started making a bit of a name for himself. He got put on, I think he played with Manu Crooks at Listen Out. He got put on the Triple J Festival in Tasmania, One Night Stand, I think it's called, or whatever it's called. Yeah, and he started picking up a bit of traction. And then, I interviewed, he had the 14 with a Dream EP. He put that out, and then I interviewed him for Acclaim. And I also made a little doco on him with Life Without Andy. That's cool. Like that was really cool. We got to do that. I actually still have the sound recording of the interview I did with him. I remember Ricky, who now manages OneFour. He was looking after Leroy at the time. And I've known Ricky for like 10 years, like we're friends. And we went down, I think we met at Clem's, which is like Leroy's favorite like chicken shop down in Newtown. I think we got some Clems, and then we went down to the park and I did an interview with him, and I kind of asked him, being like, who are 3 other Aussie artists you think are gonna blow up? And I think he said CHILLINIT, Triple One, and someone else. And yeah, it's just like a trip out to hear him say all this stuff, you know what I mean? And then we did the doco on him, which was crazy because we have all this early footage of, we picked him up from school and we did interviews down at the house in Mascot, which is where Travi P and JD, who's now known as IE, that's where they stayed, and they recorded a lot of that music there. I think Solo, who produced a lot of OneFour stuff, he lived there as well. And we did an interview in the house, and then we went to one of his gigs. So it's just cool to capture those early days, especially on video. Back then, like, not that many people did video content. Definitely not as common as nowadays. So I'm really glad we got that on camera, and it's somewhere on the internet now. But yeah, it's just crazy to look back on all that sort of stuff and still have those voice recordings and stuff, because it's obviously he's like, one of the biggest artists in the world now. Yeah, so shout out to him, man.
And that was, I guess, my next question is, I mean, Kid Laroi, I don't think it's even debatable. He is the biggest, rap act out of Australia ever. Which for me sounds weird for me to say it out loud, because being from Adelaide and seeing what the Hilltop Hoods have done, I always kind of thought that's it. Like, no one from Australia doing rap is going to take it any bigger than these guys. These guys are doing 10, 12,000 person stadiums, 5 stadiums across the country. So I'm like, that's a wrap. CHILLINIT comes through. He's doing massive, massive things, but it's still not quite those Hilltop Hood numbers in terms of, ticket sales. And then, bang, the Kid Laroi, he's international now. Like, he's bigger than the Hilltop Hoods. He's marketable overseas, and yeah, now he's huge, not just as an Australian act, but in the global market, he's just a big act altogether. Now, as someone who interviewed him, 4 years ago, and now he's at where he's at now, what do you feel are the main things that have contributed to his success?
Just his hustle, man. It's like, it wasn't like, from the interviews and stuff, I got the sense that, he's a very switched on kid, obviously very talented, and all that. I mean, there's a lot of young guys who are talented, vocally. Now they're getting younger and younger, especially after Laroi, because people have seen what happened. A lot of kids are good at singing and doing this and doing that, but like, his hustle was insane. Like, I remember like just seeing him out at parties. Like, I'm like, how are you out this late? It's like 11 o'clock. Like, go to bed, you know what I mean? But, like seeing him at parties, just networking, talking to the right people, doing this, doing that. Personally, I remember with Triple One, we supported Lil Xan. And I didn't know Laroi well at all at this point. This probably would have been 2018, I believe. I remember looking at my phone. I had 30 missed calls on my phone. Random number, had no idea who it was. Like, get a text message. Hey man, it's Laroi. I'm waiting outside the Metro Theatre. I can't get in. Like, do you reckon you could sneak me in? Because I really need a freestyle for Lil Xan. And I'm kind of like, man, it's obviously at that age, you don't understand how tours work. It's not always like, when you're at the support act, you're not always buddy-buddy with the headliner, you know what I mean? Lil Xan was off the other side of the venue, not talking to us, you know what I mean? But like, he was out there, and then he actually managed to get my friend's lanyard, and he came in. I'm pretty sure he actually met up with Lil Xan, and I heard heaps of those stories, like him sneak up to the hotel of, like Sway Lee and Ray Shremmerd, him waiting outside the hotel to freestyle for Ben Simmons, like, all these sort of things, like just crazy, crazy hustle, like, you could just tell he wanted it so bad, you know what I mean? And I don't know where he got that from, whether that was, a manager pushed him, or like that's just instilled in him, like the drive was just so insane. And I think that's been so critical to his success. And, obviously as well, he's like a crazy songwriter, like his hooks are just like so addictive and all that, like, but I really do think it's his hustle, which really gave him that kind of like X factor. And obviously it's worked, like, I never thought, like, I always knew he was like incredibly talented. I've always supported him from the first day, but to see him literally become, the number one on Billboard, like you said, like I never thought it would have happened this quick. So it's just like testament to his drive and how much he was waiting outside hotel rooms and connecting with the right people, man. It's just crazy. Yeah, it's crazy.
Now, you briefly touched on how in that little Zan gig, they had Triple One as one of the support acts. And correct me if I got the dates wrong, but I think around 2018 is when you started management for Triple One. Now, first of all, was that the first group that you did artist management for? And also, how did that role come about for you?
Yeah. Basically what happened was around 2018. Long story short, like I got turned down from 2 jobs that I was like pretty confident I was going to get in the journalism space. So one was in Berlin and one was in Melbourne, and I got turned down from both. So basically after that, I was like, fuck this, I'm sick of this. Don't want to do it anymore, chucking a hissy fit, doing whatever. So I've said this before in a lot of interviews, like in music especially, it's like when you're not making enough money from one lane, you got to pivot. You always got to pivot, because if COVID's shown us anything, like, people in the live sector, it's like, how devastating COVID was. I really feel like it's really important to have multiple streams of income, especially in an industry where jobs aren't so stable. You know what I mean? So I think that's kind of when I really started looking into doing something different. And, management had not really crossed my mind, but I was a massive, massive fan of Triple One. So like I said, I came from a background of like, hardcore, emo, punk rock, metal. So when someone like Triple One comes along and, obviously they were very heavily influenced by Suicide Boys in the early days, I understood it, you know what I mean? It really spoke to me on both the alternative side and the hip hop side. So I premiered a couple of their songs. I was just kind of helping him out here and there, just how to send emails, how to, negotiate show fees. This is all stuff I just learned from just being in the industry or whatever you want to say. So basically, I noticed that I was spending more and more time kind of just helping Triple One out. And then, one day a mate of mine was just like, why don't you just try management? And I was like, can't hurt, you know what I mean? So I literally just, I called up at that point I was really only speaking to Marty, because I'd only really met Marty at the One Day Sundays parties, like the ones I was talking about before. So me and him knew each other from just partying or whatever. And then, I called him up and I was like, hey boys, we should have a meeting. And they're like, yeah, sweet. Met up at a milkshake shop. We ordered 5 milkshakes. So weird. Like, I don't know why. Like, we ordered 5 milkshakes. And I said to him on the first day, I said, I'm not going to sit here and promise you that I'm going to make you guys famous, but I'm going to promise you that I'm going to go hard and fill in the gaps where you guys need and add value where you guys need. And I think that's what a good manager does. We don't make false promises. We just, we add value where we can. You know what I mean? We know when to lean in and when to back off. So so we just had a trial basis from the very start. And in those early days, man, it was rough, because you got to remember back then, the underground was not getting any attention really on the industry side. They were doing big numbers on YouTube, but not really big numbers streaming. No one wanted to book them for shows, which is crazy to say now because it's only 4 years later, and it seems like there's an Ozrap act on every festival, like pretty high up, and but this was way before then, you know what I mean? So the I knew a lot of promoters, a lot of booking agents, a lot of stuff, people here and there. No one wanted a bar of it. No one wanted a bar of it. Like it was fucking ridiculous, and obviously that just made me more determined to, really break him. And then one of my old friends who actually A&R'd one of the One Day records, he was head of A&R at Sony Records. So he took an interest in Triple One. We started having conversations with him. Eventually we cut a distribution deal with The Orchard, which is the subsidiary of Sony. And that's when our shit started getting played on the J's. And that's when, I really feel like Triple One getting signed, the first ones from that wave to get signed, that's what really put the whole industry on notice about what was happening underneath. And and that was, from CHILLINIT, Wombat, Shadow, Mitchos, Nerve, all those guys. I feel like after Triple One signed that deal and we started getting spun on the Jays, that's when everyone started being like, what's this? And obviously now like it's just blown up. So yeah, that was kind of like my first foray into management, and it was a really good experience for me because like I said, we had to fight for everything, you know. We were getting love from fans in Germany, Poland, Russia, the US, who were getting Triple One tattoos and then pulling 10 people to it. We were pulling 10 people to a show in Sydney. And we're like, you know, and that was the real struggle for me, you know. I was saying we have streams overseas, but how do we connect those streams overseas into paying fans in Australia? And I feel like the missing link in there was, you know, getting promoters on board, getting booking agents on board, so we were getting put in front of bigger audiences, playing headline shows, playing festivals, you know, getting radio play to expand our fan base, and then yeah, the rest is history, man. But yeah, we had to fight for everything in those early days, and yeah, it was a very different time, but I'm glad it happened. Yeah.
Now, another artist that you've managed is Nerve. Again, same sort of question. How did you guys link in, and then how did you become his manager?
Yeah, so with Nerve, we actually took him on a national Triple One tour, which was 2019. We took him to all 6 shows, but I knew him before that just through 50/50, Fully Gassed. Obviously, the ciphers and everything that was happening back then, he was really creating a name for himself because he was really, you know, him and Wombat were going hard on the grime ciphers. They were swimming up there with ADOT and Fracture and Diamond and all that, and they were holding their ground, and I was really impressed, you know. So I interviewed him a couple of times as well, supported his art wherever. And this would have been the end of 2019. He actually called me, and by this point we were on a friendly basis, you know, me and Nerve, we just chat about whatever. And he called me and he said, hey, what are you doing this New Year's? And I said, nothing. And he said, do you want to come down to Force Festival? Because, you know, we're playing and it'd be cool to hang out. And I said, yeah, for sure. So I went down to Melbourne. We got the bus. We were driving down to Lorne. On the way down to Lorne, bushfires, festival cancelled. So we went back to Melbourne, and we went to a weird hipster New Year's Eve party that was playing techno music, and it was just weird. And it was New Year's, and then Carl Golly was actually the one that hit me up and said, this was like 3 a.m. in like a techno party, and Carl Golly's like, hey man, like, have you ever thought about managing Nerve? You should give it a crack. And I was like, yeah, can we not talk about this now? Like, I'm actually on holidays. Like, you know what I mean? We're in a techno party and it's really loud and whatever. So yeah, like a couple of days later, I went back to Sydney, called Nerve, and I said, hey, Kyle said this to me on New Year's Eve, but I don't know if he was just drunk or whatever. But Nerve was like, yeah, fuck, let's do it. So yeah, from the start of 2020, I've just been managing Nerve, and obviously it hasn't been the easiest run because of, I feel like we've never really been able to capitalize that hard on his momentum because we just had 2 years of COVID, and he's played a couple of shows here and there. He did half of his tour, but then the other half got canned because of COVID. But this year we're really going hard with Nerve. You know, he's a super switched on artist. Obviously, I think it goes without saying, he can spit bars from now until next Sunday if he wanted to. You know, really determined, knows what he wants, charismatic. He's the whole package. He's a great artist to work with, you know. So yeah, this year, you know, he's been on tour with Bliss Nesso. He's been on tour with DJ Death Rays. He's about to do the tour with H. He's got a bunch of new music to drop. So now I feel like really this year is when it's you know, COVID's hopefully, you know, touch wood, is gone forever. So we're just really going hard this year. But yeah, it's been awesome to manage him, and you know, not only as a friend, but obviously an artist I really believe in, you know.
Now, so correct me if I'm wrong, you're still managing Nerve, but you're not still managing Triple One?
Yeah.
And then are those two artists the only artists that you have had managerials for, or there's other artists that you've done that for as well?
Yeah, I literally just started managing Speed. Like that, it's not hip hop at all, so we're not going to talk about it for that long. But it's weird because they're a hardcore band, but they're having crossover in the hip hop space. You know, like Howie loves them. They played a show with Posse Shot down in Melbourne. They played a show with Nerve in Sydney. I think it's just because they wear sportswear and stuff, and they're just like jacked Asian dudes like that. Hip hop people can resonate with them, you know? So yeah, it's awesome to see that, you know, a hardcore band, especially an Asian hardcore band, is resonating and having crossover in the hip hop space. But yeah, I've just started co-managing them last week, and they're blowing up, you know. We fucking beat Chris Brown on the ARIA charts by 27 units, you know what I mean? Like Like, how does a bedroom operation for a hardcore band beat Chris Brown? I don't know, but it happened. So yeah, it's been really good to work with them and work on something outside of hip hop, to be honest. Like, I feel like hip hop, sometimes we can get really tunnel vision with what we're listening to and what we're doing. So it's really good for me to kind of, get someone outside of that sphere and be a more well-rounded manager or well-rounded A&R. Yeah.
Now, around this time, is that when you've started the YouTube channel that you were running, Filter Zone?
Yeah, Filter, the magazine itself, started in 2019. So that was basically, we started it because we felt like all the mainstream publications were focusing on the same 3 and 4 rappers, which they were. And that goes for, not just blogs, but like kind of radio and all that stuff as well. And we could kind of see kind of the same sort of thing. We could see that, by that time, Triple One, CHILLINIT, Wombat, they were all kind of like bubbling up there, but we could see that there was still another whole groundswell of artists coming up, and we really wanted to put a shine on those guys. So basically, me and Chris, who's a guy I've worked with for years and years behind the scenes, he's like incognito. You're not going to find a photo of him online. He's fully like hidden away. But me and him just decided to start Filter, and our whole goal originally was to bring back long form content, because with like everything was just getting too clickbaity, we felt, and everything was getting short form and doing this and doing that. So we were like, we're going to bring back long form articles, because writing was my first passion, my first talent. We're going to do that and see how we go. So we did that for a year, and we actually went pretty well. We had a lot of we profiled a lot of mad artists. We did the first OneFour interview, one of the first interviews, or if not the first, with HEFS. And then we started getting hit up by brands to help them kind of like execute like hip hop centric campaigns. Like, we started working with Nike and JD Sports and Champion, and we started throwing parties for Lee, and we did a lot of cool shit in that first year. And I think after that first year, we realized why everyone stopped doing long form content, because it takes so fucking long. Like, I was doing articles and, obviously I'd done that for 10 years prior, or 9 or 8 years prior, but it was just like so time consuming. And back then I had so much stuff going on, and then we were like, fuck it, let's just do video, because, it's just way easier, and YouTube's popping, and, it's not that many people were doing kind of like YouTube-y stuff back then. Like, obviously you were, but like, it wasn't like it is nowadays, you know what I'm saying? So, so we just started doing the Filter interviews, and we had a lot of fun with those too, we did kind of like, we did Husky, we did OneFour twice, we did Rops, HP Boys, heaps of people. Yeah, and it was cool while it lasted, but yeah, again, I think me and Chris just had so many other different, goals and plans with what we wanted to do professionally and personally. So we just kind of put that to rest. And then we thought about bringing it back this year, but we both also had different ideas on which route it should take. But I'm not going to not going to put it to rest forever yet. Like, me and Chris still talk every day. So yeah, it could come back in one form or another. But yeah, for now, I just think we got so much on. He runs a fucking modeling agency with 100 models on the roster. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm doing whatever I'm doing. So yeah, like, who knows, it might come back, but yeah, I'm really proud of what we got to achieve in those 2 years, especially kind of like through COVID and stuff. Yeah.
Now, was it off the back of that then yourself with Jade LaFlay and Jasmine Nikita, you guys did that Spotify podcast?
Yeah.
Now, again, how did your relationship with them come about? And then how did the whole Spotify thing come together? And why did you specifically work with those two people on that particular project?
Yeah, so I've known Jade and Jazz for like a couple of years now, just through the clubbing circuit, festival circuit, whatever. That was actually more Spotify's thing to put us into a show. And obviously like A1 is like, it's, the biggest editorial playlist for hip hop in the country by far, you know what I mean? And it's such a great discovery tool for so many amazing artists from the hip hop space. Obviously I think it's played a big part in, the whole rise of drill, especially since 2019. And then yeah, we just did the podcast off that. Chris from Filter, he actually produced the whole podcast. So me and him produced it, and then I hosted it as well. But behind the scenes, he was doing all the editing and the scripting and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, we did that for a whole season, and yeah, it was a really good experience for me as well, because like obviously I'd done video interviews like you've seen on Filter, and that was more long form, but this was obviously more of a different format. Like we had guests on, but it was more conversational between the three of us, and like it was really cool to be able to do that. And yeah, Jazz is cool. Like still support her to this day. She's doing crazy things, not only the DJ stuff, but she's a very ambitious girl. And Jade, like, seen her on the clubbing circuit since forever, and she's still doing DJing stuff out there and doing parties and brand stuff and all this other cool stuff. So yeah, shout out to them both, man. And yeah, it was a really good experience. And yeah, I got to interview a lot of cool artists. By that time I thought I interviewed every artist I wanted to interview. And then, like Young and Lips, was one that I got to do. He was one that came up just as I kind of stopped doing the other stuff. So that was cool. I got to interview him. And then, who else? Russ Millions, like a lot of cool people that were like coming up at the time. Like just cool people. And then I think the thing that we did at the end of the season, which was kind of like the A1s to watch list, like that was also, I think, really good for us to show like love to artists who were coming up as well, and who we thought were coming up next. Because I remember the social media traction we got off that was crazy. Like I think I posted one on like the Spotify post about it got like 2,000 comments or something, and that just shows you how healthy the scene is here. And I really appreciate, Spotify for giving us that opportunity, obviously, to work with, one of the biggest music companies in the world. It's crazy, So yeah, shout out to them, man.
I think it's after the Spotify podcast that you've written the Spanian book.
Yep.
Now, Spanian, for myself, as well as probably a lot of people, he's one of my favorite artists. I'm more engaged with him as Spanian the personality, as opposed to Spanian the rapper. I remember catching on to an interview of his way earlier, before everyone knew who he was, and I was just very interested in that interview. It's on YouTube. It's like 30 minutes long. He's talking about how he's been locked up, and what really caught me about him is when he was starting to talk about the influences, the rap influences for him. The names that he was mentioning were heavily New York based dudes, from memory. And I always kind of felt like Adelaide and Melbourne traditionally really pulled from New York, whereas in Sydney, I don't know exactly where Sydney pulls from. I just kind of feel like, if you look at back in the day particular, Sydney was just different. It's just doing its own thing. He's now become, maybe the biggest personality in Australian rap. How did you click in with him, and then how did the whole idea and execution of writing a book come about?
Yeah, so basically, I had the same story as you. I've seen Spanian's videos from 2017 or 2018 or whenever they were. Just thought, obviously I said before, Army the Fairest, Jenna Mind Tricks, that's kind of what I grew up on, and I could definitely see that he was taking influence from that sphere of artists. You know what I'm saying? And he's right when he says that no one was really doing that style in Australia, prolifically. So that caught my attention straight away. But yeah, obviously, him telling stories online, and that also added a whole nother dimension of him that, was very rare with other hip hop artists. So from 2018 or 2019, I was trying to get him in for an interview badly. I was reaching out to, old mutual friends from high school that knew him. I was reaching out to the Last Edition, who was doing his videos, reaching out to, multiple people, and just never got anywhere with getting an interview with him. And I kind of left it at that, you know what I mean? I was like, if he wants to do an interview, he'll hit me up. I don't want to start hassling people, you know what I mean? I'll just leave it at that. And that was 2018, 2019. And then the start of 2021, last year. So Adit, who I co-managed Triple One with back in the day, also in Horror Show, the producer of Horror Show, he actually hit me up and he said, oh, funnily enough, I'm starting to manage SPANIAN now. And I think he got introduced to SPANIAN through Khaled Rahim, his producer, who also produces for Leroy and Doja Cat and Rihanna and shit. He produces SPANIAN stuff, and then Khaled hooked at it up with SPANIAN. And then, he hit me up and said, yeah, so I'm managing SPANIAN now. And I was like, oh yeah, mad. That's cool. Like, I think that's going to be a really like interesting, journey for you. Like, it's, he's a once in a generation artist. I think, it'll be cool. And he was like, yeah. And then I said, oh, if he ever wants to do a book, let me know. Like, it'd be funny to write a book. And like, I just threw it out as an off comment. I just talking shit, shooting the shit, just saying whatever. And Adit was like, yeah, sweet. A couple of months later, Adit calls me back and he says, oh, were you serious about doing that book? And I was like, maybe. And he was like, yeah, sweet, like, let's do it. And I'm like, oh, okay, how do we do that? Like, I've never written a book before, I've been doing journalism for 10 years now, but I've never considered myself a journalist. Like, I don't get invited to the journalism awards. I don't do any of that shit. Like, I just write articles about rappers and that's it. You know what I mean? So it was kind of surprising that Adit actually hit me back, but obviously he had faith that I could do it. So I was like, oh, damn, like, maybe I can actually do it. We met up with SPANIAN up in the Horror Show studio on Enmore Road in Newtown. He literally comes in. We've never met before, never spoken before, shook his hand. He's like 2 heads taller than me because he's like 6'3" or something. I'm like 5'10", whatever. And then SPANIAN's just like, so what do you want me to do? And I was like, how about you just tell me about your life? And he's like, from the start? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, all right, sweet. And he literally just said his life for 2 hours, like nonstop, like didn't interrupt him. He just relayed his life from literally the day he was born up until that day, and just did it off with like the craziest memory. I was like, I don't even know how he did that. That's fucking crazy, So from there, I took like one section of the book of what he said, and I was like, this is going to be one chapter of the book. And then I met up with him again, and then asked him way more deeper interview questions about that particular period of his life. Got it transcribed, wrote the one chapter, and it took me a couple of days to write after we got the transcription because I was just going hard with it. And then we took that chapter and pitched it to a couple of publishers. So it's like getting a record deal, I guess. Like, we just pitched it to a couple of publishers, seeing if anyone would take it on and fund the book. Eventually, Hachette, they ended up actually agreeing to publish the book, and I think they did Mark Hunt's biography as well, so they were kind of used to kind of like, Australian kind of counterculture stuff. And then they agreed to publish the book, and it was just fucking crazy. So yeah, from that one chapter, we had a 3 or 4 month turnaround to get the book done. Like, it was ridiculous. And then COVID was happening, so basically, like, I was meeting up with SPANIAN like 2 or 3 times a week, just having like intense like interview sessions, getting it transcribed, going home, having nowhere to go because of COVID, and then just doing 12-hour days of just like writing. And then we got the book done in like 3 months. And then the editing process with the editor took like, a couple of weeks. And then from then the book was out in December, and like, that was it. Yeah, it was pretty intense. Yeah, it was pretty intense.
You've written it, you've edited it, it's ready to go, it's ready for release. What were your feelings at that point in time? What were the expectations? What sort of conversations did you and SPANIAN have in regards to what you expect will happen from this book? Or did you have no expectations?
Yeah, it's hard to say because, like, I mean, besides the fact that neither me or SPANIAN had ever released a book at that point, neither me or SPANIAN had read a book in like a long time before that either. You know what I mean? But in a weird way, I almost think that was crucial to its success, because I wasn't going in there thinking about how to write a book, because the audience for this book is not the usual audience who's just going to walk into Dimmicks or Angus or Robertson and just, buy a book every week. You know what I mean? We knew that a lot of the audience was going to be a lot younger. Obviously, SPANIAN, a lot of kids look up to SPANIAN and this and that. And a lot of people aren't necessarily your audience who, like I said, buy books regularly. So I think we went in there with the focus of making this book really accessible for like a wider audience, and not focusing it so much on just like rap guys. You know what I mean? Like, because rap guys and girls can only get you so far, but we think Spanion's story is so translatable to like a wider audience. You know, if we think about, he always talks about Chopper Read. If we talk about Chopper Read or Ned Kelly, you know, those are just iconic Australian counterculture stories. And that's kind of, I think, where everyone sees Spanian as well. So we didn't want to confine it to, you know, just book readers or just hip hop fans. We wanted to go in there and make the book accessible to kind of like a really big audience. And it's done that, you know, like it's sold like really well. It's become a bestseller like a couple of days after it came out. And yeah, but like the expectations, like we literally had no idea. Like I had no idea. Like it's uncharted waters for someone who comes from the hip hop landscape in Australia. Well, at least to my knowledge, you might tell me different, but not to my knowledge has another book, like not counting photography books, but like, not to my knowledge has another book being written on an Australian rapper. And, you know, so like a lot of us were kind of just like, we had a lot of faith in the story, but at the same time, there was always that kind of sense in our heads of being like, fuck, we don't know how it's going to go. But, you know, the publisher, they put money into it. So they were confident. So that, I think, made us confident. You know what I'm saying? Like, we were like, these people know what they're doing. They publish millions of books, thousands of books. So they think it's going to sell. So yeah, let's just see how we go. And obviously the reception was like incredible. Like, you know, I was almost expecting more negative feedback when it came out, because obviously Spanian, a lot of the stuff he says is controversial. So I was expecting like, you know, a bit of backlash, but like literally 99% of the feedback was like, hey, like I really enjoyed the book. And, you know, a lot of people saying, hey, like, you know, normally I don't read books, but, you know, this is the first book I picked up in ages. I enjoyed it. A lot of people saying, hey, I racked this book from Big W and that's funny as well. You know, like who cares? Like, I mean, actually, no, publisher's going to hate me for saying that, but don't rack it. Buy it. Please buy it. But, but, you know, it was really nice to get feedback. You know, especially me not really having any experience in the field. So shout out to Spanian's management as well for, you know, putting that faith in me and a faith in Spanian. But just goes to show that his stories are very powerful and very iconic and unique story. And I'm glad it got to get out there in, you know, whatever form it may be, audiobook or, you know, like just a regular physical book, or, you know, he's still doing his shit on podcasts and stuff like that. So yeah, it's good to see him still out there, you know, and he's grown a lot, you know, throughout this whole process, I think.
And that was actually my next question. Has there been any talks of releasing an audio version, like an audio book of that, or is it just going to stay in print, or there's just been no conversation about that?
Oh, there's an audiobook out now of the actual book.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's an audiobook version, but he doesn't read it. He reads like little bonus chapters at the end. The audiobook's read by like a professional like audiobook guy. But yeah, that's out there. A lot of people have bought it on Audible and they just like consuming books that way. But yeah, that's out there. Buy it, yeah.
And I guess in terms of like the sales of the book, do you know how many copies got printed and how many got sold and that sort of thing?
Nah, to be honest, I don't know that information. I mean, it was like, they said it was a bestseller, so I'm just like, okay, I just, you know what I mean? Like, I guess in my instance, it's like, I essentially got brought in as just someone to do a job, you know what I mean? It wasn't my story to tell. I'm just helping Spanian tell that story. So I kind of got brought in just to do my part, and then after that was it. You know, I wasn't involved in any of the marketing or the publicity of the book. I just got brought in to help write it, and that was it. So I wasn't involved in kind of like the BTS stuff. That was more Spanian's management and the publisher who handled that directly. But yeah, from all reports, it sold really well. It was in the bestsellers in the true crime and biography and nonfiction categories as well, and it got nominated at the National Book Industry Awards, or whatever their equivalent of the ARIAs is, or whatever. It got a nomination there, didn't win, but you know, it's good that it got nominated and recognized. I think it's, you know, only going to open the doors for more stories like this to be told on a national and international basis, you know. So yeah, it was really cool. It was really cool.
As somebody who has been, you know, around the scene, the culture, the industry for the time that you have, it'd be interesting to get your take and opinion on, you know, certain topics and conversations about the culture. Now, the first one is Triple J. Now, I remember distinctly when the Hilltop Hoods had nosebleed section on Triple J. And that was like the first time that I guess, Australian rap really popped off on the radio. Like prior to that, at least in Adelaide, it might have been getting a few spins here and there on community stations. But then once Triple J picked up the hoods, you know, just the whole landscape changed. You know, the doors opened, and I know a lot of artists here in South Australia were like, all right, this is the way to go. We need to get Triple J radio play. And, you know, since that day to now, which is like 20 years, Triple J has continued to support Australian rap. And I think any artist that has been supported by Triple J wouldn't be where they are today if it wasn't for that Triple J support. So there's that side of the fence. And then the other side of the fence is, I guess some people feel like Triple J only support a certain type of artist and ignore other types of artists. I guess the overall question is, in your opinion, do you think that Triple J has had a positive or negative impact on Australian rap, or a bit of both? And if so, why do you think that is?
Yeah. I mean, it's a question that's been asked like a lot. I guess it's floating around the hip hop space a lot. Like what you're saying with the hoods, I feel like people don't realize the implications of a national youth broadcaster. And like I've seen it time and time again when the Jays started, even when the Jays started playing Triple One stuff, not only on the industry side were, you know, a lot of doors open, but also it gave us the room and the ability to tour like regionals and non-capital cities with more confidence, because people in, the Central Coast or like, you know, wherever, like places that aren't, you know, metropolitan areas, they listen to the Jays. And the ability for us to tour in certain places where we probably wouldn't have been able to tour without the Jays, I think that's one of the massive positive impacts that it's had. The ability just to be able to tour like nationally with confidence, with the support of Triple J. What I would say is like the other good stuff about it is that I feel like I have heard that criticism that people say they only support a certain type of hip hop. But I think, you know, with stuff like Bars of Steel getting introduced, other more kind of, I guess, hip hop centric hosts jumping on board alongside Howie, who's obviously done like such an amazing job. And, you know, like, sorry, before I get onto that, like Howie, you know, obviously he's one of my mentors. And I think he's just done an amazing job there. Not only on air, but like, you know, even when we think about like the underground scene, those iconic ciphers, like, you know, the one Nerve, CHILLINIT, Alex Jones and Husky, that is just like iconic. You know, that's going to be one of the things that we look back on as like a hallmark moment of, you know, the scene at the time, you know, the 2018 kind of boom. And then, you know, In and Out just supporting, you know, everyone from, you know, Snowy Badman to Panya on his show, you know, just taking the whole breadth of the hip hop thing. And I think Bars of Steel has really built on what Howie's done in really kind of introducing the wider Triple J audience to a new breed of, you know, hip hop artists that are coming out that they might not be familiar with. I think it's like a really important gateway avenue for like a lot of wider Australia, to be honest. In terms of what they support, I mean, you know, they've supported Nerve like heaps. They've supported Triple One a lot, and I think they are like honestly like diversifying the kind of style of hip hop artists they support. I can't really speak on. I know that when people talk about that criticism, they're talking about back in the day, like the whole barbecue rap thing. Like, is that what you mean? Like people were saying, oh, you guys are only pushing like the backyard, you know, barbecue rap. Like, I can't really speak on that because to be honest, I wasn't really listening to the radio that much back then, or like Oz hip hop in general. That wasn't really my focus. You know what I'm saying? So I can't really speak on that particular criticism that much. But what I would say is that, yeah, I definitely feel like in the past, especially 2-3 years, they're kind of realizing that, you know, hip hop's, you know, the biggest genre in the world. In Australia, it's growing exponentially. And yeah, I think that what they've been doing with, you know, different hosts and bars of steel and all that is really good. Yeah.
Now, Bars of Steel is a segment that, when I first seen that it got introduced through the Jays, I was just like, yep, this is going to be sick. They've had numerous artists go on there and flex their shit. For you personally, who are some artists that you would like to see on Bars of Steel that haven't been on there yet?
Probably like to see Snowy Badman on there. Who else? I'd probably like to see... put me on the spot here. Section 60. I like Nams from Section 60. I think he could go hard on there. Moses from Melbourne. Moses TBS. I'd like to see him on there. I think he's cool. Cahooks. I'd like to see him on there. Yeah, that's just 4 off the top of my head. But I really feel like, it's a good initiative because like we saw with Kobe D, he did the Bars of Steel there, went crazy, and that became his track Jody, which is like, one of his biggest tracks on DSPs now. So yeah, I really think it's a great opportunity if you have, the right song and the right beat and it's the right timing. It could be huge for you. Yeah.
Over the last 20 years, the landscape has changed. And certain artists or groups have played a significant hand in the change of, the styles, sonically, dress code, etc. Now, for me personally, and this is in order, I kind of feel like the game changes of Australian rap kind of start with, Lyrical Commission, and then came the Hilltop Hoods. Because I think LC dropped Stage's set in like 01, 02. Hoods dropped The Calling in 03. That's what ended up on the Jays. That's gone bang. And then I reckon around 2010-ish, Curses come into the picture. And then that's kind of flipped shit on its head. Then fast forward the clock to, 2019-ish. Then OneFour has come through, and that's kicked off a whole new thing. And then Hooligan HEFS then comes through with the whole blend of EDM and rap music. So in this like sort of 20-year chunk period, they're the 5 names that stand out to me in terms of the conversation of game changers. Would you agree, disagree, change some of the names, add some names? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'll put maybe 2 more in. I think in the 2018 space, I think CHILLINIT has to be mentioned somewhere there, because even though what he was doing wasn't revolutionary, he was really the figurehead of that new wave of underground stuff and he took that to kind of the most insane heights. You know what I mean? Like, he was really the spearhead that kind of took the underground scene to new heights. I would also maybe put Young and Lips in there somewhere, purely because I think he's the flagship artist that kind of started doing the melodic stuff over heavier beats, but also fit in with the drill movement. So I'd almost put him alongside OneFour and HEFS maybe, because I swear there was a period as well, like obviously it was happening internationally with like Polo G and those kind of guys, but locally he was the kind of guy who was really bridging that melodic gap when the drill explosion happened, and he was doing it the best. And I think if we have this conversation in like 2 years, I think Cahooks is going to be in that conversation as well, because I feel like we're in this era of drill music now where people are getting a bit tired of the violent lyrics, and he's the one that's doing drill with pop sensibilities that can be played in the club that girls are going to dance to. And obviously we've seen that overseas with guys like Central C. So I feel like he's going to be that next iteration that kicks off, people ask every day, where's the drill scene going? Is drill dead? Doing this, doing that? I think it's just going to evolve, and I think that's going to be kind of like the main iteration of drill going forward. And I think Cahooks is going to be the guy that kicks that off. Yeah.
Now, out of those listed names, I'm going to pluck a few, and then you tell me why you think that particular artist has had the levels of success that they've had. So I guess the first one, Cursor. Why do you think that when Cursor came through, it was such a phenomenon, and he's still highly active and popular, 10, 12 years later? What do you think it is about Curse that really, propelled him to the level that he's at?
I think Curse just spoke to a particular subculture in Sydney that was big at the time and that no one else was willing to do. Other people were willing to do, but he did it on a level which was unprecedented at the time. I think he just had like an attitude that he doesn't give a fuck about what anyone else thinks, and he's just going to do it. I mean, we were just talking about Hooligan HEFS, right? When you listen back to the like dead sets and stuff, he was doing that, hard dance with rapping hybrid with like throwback samples, and he just did that song with Joel Turner. Like you know what I mean? He was doing all this stuff way back then, and to her credit, so was Sky High, doing that kind of like rave or, hard dance mixed with the rap, and that being such a huge sound in like whenever it popped off, 2018, 2019, to see Curse do it, back then, imagine how much hate he got for that back then. So I really give credit to him for, what he represents, doing it with a no fucks given attitude. And obviously it's built like an amazing long career for him. He's stayed on top for many, many years. Like you said, whatever it's been, 10, 12 years that he's been killing it. And I'm sure the album that he's got coming out, his 10th album, I know that Open Till Late's been working on it. I'm sure that's going to be a huge success too. So yeah, props to Cursor, man.
Although, artists like Hooligan HEFS, CHILLINIT, all the guys that we've named that have come after Cursor, although their styles are different, I kind of feel like Cursor paved the way for these newer guys to be able to do what they're doing today. Do you feel like that's a fair statement?
I feel like that's a very fair statement. I feel like everything we've seen happen since 2018, it was almost Cursor who laid the blueprint for that, to do it independently, and to do it so kind of like abrasively against what was happening at the time. You know what I mean? Like, I even remember there was this weird situation about the Come Together festival where Cursor got billed, and then he was billed with a bunch of other Oz rap acts, and then he got dropped because of... Do you know what I'm talking about? There was some weird situation that happened there. So like, it just shows you that like, the narrative against Cursor was kind of like, oh, he's just like a lad rapper. He's like a Centrelink rapper doing this, doing that. And I really feel like even nowadays, like drill, even though it's a completely different style of like music, that kind of like, the aesthetics and the attitude is like very, very similar. And I feel like Cursor was the first one to take it to such heights, and, give him his flowers while he's here, and while he's still rapping, because it's just like insane what he's been able to do. And, I heard, off a Take Flight interview that there might be some sort of Cursor Hooligan HEFS actual collabo coming up in the future. So I hope that happens, man, because it'll really be like a full circle thing. Like I said, Cursor doing, not only being like an underground icon, but doing that, dance rap style, and then HEFS being kind of like the flagship at doing it now, and them two coming together. I think it's going to be like a big event,
That'll be huge, man. I hope that happens. That'll be great for the culture. Do you recall when Cursor battled 360? Like, were you up to date with that when it was happening, or that was...
Yeah, I watched it not that long ago again. I don't know why. There was one day where I watched that, and I watched the Highest Man, the track he did over the Outcast Miss Jackson instrumental. Yeah, I don't remember like the details around it, but yeah, I remember like watching it. I remember 60 had a line about, the one that stuck with me was the one about like something tennis instructor, like all that shit. Like, yeah, like that was funny when it happened. That whole thing was funny. It was weird though. It was like how it was all like kind of it was kind of like set up in a way where it was like lads versus metros. You know what I mean? It was like very weird. And when we interviewed Cursor like a couple of months back or on the A1 podcast, it was funny because we actually talked about that, and he was talking about, oh yeah, you know, like people said lads versus metros, and now like over time they've kind of like melded a little bit, you know, like back then it was like not that socially acceptable to wear TNs or tailwinds or this and that, and then slowly over time all these kind of like fashions that were once laughed upon kind of got molded into just like mainstream sportswear. So yeah, it's just like a funny full circle moment when we asked him about that on the interview. But yeah, I remember watching that. I don't know if I watched it when it first, I don't even remember what year it would have come out. Was it like kind of like 10 years, around 10 years ago or something like?
Around that, yeah.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I don't remember like the full thing around it at the time, but yeah, I remember it being a landmark thing, and still to this day, you know, obviously people talk about it. And then yeah, it's funny.
When you watched it recently, because I watch that battle like once or twice a year. When you watched it recently, who do you feel won?
It's hard to say, man. It's hard to say. I'm always going to say Cursor because I'm more aligned to that style of music. You know what I mean? Like I'm always going to be... He's obviously like more the artist that I've gravitated towards that kind of scene. So I'm always going to say him. But then I'm sure a lot of people say 60 as well, because 60 is a great rapper, you know, and I've heard he's got new stuff coming out. You know, I've actually never met him personally, but you know, I've heard like through other people that he's got new stuff coming out, and fucking oath, because like I think it's good that he started Rapper Tag last year, because he's a really good rapper. He's a really, really good rapper. But I think purely out of just who he is and what he represents, I'm always gonna just go for Cursor. You know what I'm saying? But 60's a crazy rapper, and I think, yeah, shout out to him for tagging Nerve in the Rapper Tag and all that. Yeah.
Now, another artist that we briefly discussed, CHILLINIT. Now, CHILLINIT really, you know, popped off or started to pop off, I think, around the 2018 period. And I kind of feel like around that 2016 to 2018 gap, it's like there was a space there for someone to come through and do what he did. The thing that I liked the most is like he came through at a time where I feel the emphasis was not so much on the bars, and he came through and really put the bars in people's faces saying, yo, this is where it's at. And that's probably my favorite thing that CHILLINIT has done. For you, what do you feel has been his contribution to the game, and why do you think he's had the levels of success that he's had to date?
Yeah, like you said, I feel like 2016, 2017, it was Australian hip hop was kind of getting big on that trappy sound, and a lot of people were relying on their producers just to kind of come through with big kind of beats and kind of relying on the hooks to kind of get them through the song, maybe a little bit. Probably someone's going to hate me for saying that, but it's true. And then, like you said, when that happened and you know, 50-50 fully gassed on the grime side, and then you had CHILLINIT doing those kind of get bodied freestyles with not freestyles, but the get bodied tracks with Talakai, putting very heavy emphasis on kind of like, you know, hard assertive delivery with a lot of like punchline heavy songs. I think that was critical to his success, and I think people were ready to hear that. I also think crucial to his success is his branding. Like his branding is crazy. You know what I mean? Like 420 fam, you know, like I don't smoke weed. Like I don't like do any of that shit. But, you know, I can see that, you know, if I'm like, you know, 14, 15 years old and, you know, I'm getting into hip hop, that's like a very attractive brand to be attached to, you know what I mean? And the way he promotes it and the collaborations he's done with Gator Bug and the merch, and, you know, this is credit to his management team as well. They've done an amazing job with the way that they've set everything up, and, you know, all the dots are really connected for him because obviously his lyrical talent is there. That's been evident even since like the Hustle Hard days, you know what I mean? Like he's been rapping for a long time before he kind of got to the level that I think he dipped out of the rap game for a couple of years there and then came back and just killed it, you know? So I think it's a combination of, you know, him just having a very, you know, natural talent for lyricism and punchlines, but also, yeah, his branding has been kind of like impeccable from the time he came back. Yeah.
The next big phenomenon that comes out of Australian rap for me is OneFour. Now, when OneFour came through, I've heard stories that, How got shown OneFour and he couldn't find a way to put it on radio because of the nature of the content. And I'm not too sure whether they get radio spins now or not, but however they've done it, they then kind of like Cursor was internet heavy within Australia, CHILLINIT internet heavy within Australia with maybe a touch of UK. And then when OneFour have come through, they've kind of really like pierced that Australia bubble and now are appealing heavy to like New Zealand, Australia, the UK, maybe some US. Again, what do you feel are the things that have really propelled them to the levels that they're at?
I think, that style of, people ask me this all the time, and I'm like, I don't know if they were the very first to do that style of UK drill in Australia, but they were the first to do it so prolifically and consistently. That's what I would say, because I don't want anyone coming on after me saying, I did a drill track in, you know what I mean? But I really feel like, them having the 5 members out at that time, having 5 rappers, having 1 consistent producer at the time, that was really crucial to success because, even nowadays, people nowadays with, I like YP for, his delivery style. I like JM's because he can do the more melodic style. I like Spenny because he's definitely the most kind of like assertive and kind of like bar driven guy. You know what I'm saying? Like everyone's likes a different member of OneFour for a different reason. My favorite is Lex, My favorite is Lex because I can hear, his influence, and same with Selly, you can tell that Selly listened to a lot of like old school New York hip hop by the way that he's more punchline driven with his bars. His favorite rapper was Big L. So everyone's got a different favorite member of OneFour, and I think that's been crucial to their success, kind of just balancing each other out and coming together as a group and gelling really well. I also feel like it came at a time when, we had this whole conversation about Australian hip hop becoming more internationally sounding. This was kind of like the big conversation that was happening even as early as, I would say probably, Minor Crook's era. Like a lot of people started talking about, we need to make hip hop which is more internationally sounding. And I think OneFour just ran with that, but not towards the US, which is, I think, where everyone thought it was going to go, but more towards the UK. And I think that was like a massive part of their success as well. And also just like their videos. I think their videos, they just leveled up hugely, I think off the back of that, we've seen videographers almost become like personalities in themselves, Maxed Out Films, Crazy Visions, all these guys, The Last Edition, like big powerhouse, like cinematic looking videos, you know what I mean? And I think even if you don't resonate with OneFour on a musical level, if you see 100 guys in balaclavas, like just letting off flares outside the courthouse, there's intrigue there, you know what I mean? There's something alluring about that, about the unknown, about things that we're not familiar with, and I think that's a big part of OneFour's success too. So I think what they've been able to do in the past, 4 years has really been insane, and I really think they've reset the parameters of what it means to be a successful artist in Australia. Because 10 years ago, if you were an underground artist and you got 50,000 YouTube views or MySpace players in the first week, you'd be cheering. And then suddenly OneFour comes along and they're getting a couple of million in their first couple of days, So I really feel that OneFour have definitely changed the parameters, and even people who don't like them, they've got to recognize that they've helped build that ecosystem that's been so healthy since 2019 and really kind of changed hip hop in Australia forever, I think, to be honest, forever. Yeah.
And like, I've heard like over the years that they've had some issues with performing and touring, police shutting down their shows before they even get a chance to perform. I remember they were scheduled to come to Adelaide at some point, and then that show got shut down. So I don't really know of them doing many live shows personally. I definitely feel like they haven't had the opportunity to do live shows and performances the way other acts on their caliber have had the opportunities. Do you think that that has hindered their career in any way? And if so, how much?
Yeah, I mean, any person that works at a label will tell you that, you know, the live element is so crucial to any rollout. You know what I mean? Because that's when the people see the music in front of them. That's when they're putting videos up on their Instagram stories or their Snapchats or their TikToks or whatever. You know, that's the moment when everything really comes to life. And I think them not being able to do shows has, I mean, like, they're still going great. You know what I mean? But I think it's definitely put a dent in their kind of momentum, even though their momentum's carried through because their online presence has been so strong. I feel like for other acts, they're not going to be that lucky just because OneFour is, again, like the same thing we were saying in SPANIAN, is like OneFour is pretty much a once in a generation artist. You know what I mean? The fact that they played their first show in Brisbane, first ticketed show in Brisbane, they sold 2,500 tickets. That just doesn't happen. That doesn't happen to normal people. You know what I mean? People take years and years and years and years and years of relentless touring to build up to that level of hype and headline. You know what I'm saying? So I really feel like they haven't been hurt by it as much as a regular act would, but I still feel like if they were playing shows, you know, their momentum would be that much stronger. You know what I'm saying? But they just got announced on a festival like 2 days ago. The Grass is Greener Festival, and YG and Ty Dolla $ign and some other guys are playing. So yeah, hopefully things have changed. I can't speak on, you know, the legalities or the police situation, obviously. But, you know, hopefully that's the sign of, you know, more live shows to come for OneFour.
Hooligan HEFS, he's an artist that's really blown me away because the way that he's been able to mix the EDM thing with the hip hop thing, and it's just popped off massively. Now, for me, as someone that's been DJing in the R&B clubs for quite a while, with the exception of the Hilltop Hoods Nosebleed section, I'd never had anyone request an Australian rap song in an R&B club before. And then Hooligan HEFS comes along with no effect. And now there's clubs that are playing, you know, him, OneFour, all sorts of Australian rap. What do you feel is attributed to his levels of success?
I think Hooligan HEFS, like you said, he really combines that style of, you know, street rap with the hard dance element. And I think those are the two big genres that are really predominant in West Sydney. Obviously, West Sydney long has been a hub for like we spoke about Cursor, you know, even going back Forte, even going back before that Death Wish Cast. You know what I mean? Like, it's been a big hub for kind of like the more underground hip hop stuff. And then you have, you know, hard dance. You know, DEFCON was out at Penrith for like, you know, years and years and years, and that's kind of like, you know, the global flagship hard dance festival. So I think that him being able to combine those two so seamlessly has really put, you know, Sydney on a national scale and kind of established like, this is our sound. You know what I mean? This is the West Sydney sound. I think he's done that so well. And I also think like he's a very charismatic rapper. You know what I mean? He's got a lot of like, like his hooks and stuff are really infectious, and the way his cadence and the way he says things is like very, very charismatic. And, you know, even his like, my favorite stuff he is personally is kind of like the more rap stuff like Paper Route or If You Know, You Know. But, you know, the dance stuff, like you said, when you're in a club, like it just goes off. And, you know, some other West Sydney artists have run with that sound too with a lot of success. But yeah, like he's one of the rare, you know, Australian artists that they now get, you know, requested in clubs. And, you know, it might be the biggest song of the night, to be honest. You know, I know OneFour The Message, that was the biggest song at a couple of club nights I went to in Sydney when it first came out. And before that, even Minor Crook's Assumptions, that was like a huge club track. So yeah, that was also a turning point for me, what you're saying, when I started hearing people in Australian clubs reacting to Australian music. And I've really got to credit that to also One Day Sundays, the festivals that they used to have in Sydney, but they also had them in Brisbane and Melbourne, because those guys were like guys who were through and through from the Aussie rap scene, but they were out there mixing Hermitude with Future, you know what I mean? Or like Spit Syndicate with Waka Flocka Flame, you know? And they were really bridging that gap, because I feel like for a long time, if you're into Aussie hip hop and you liked club American rap, people were just a bit like, oh, you know what I mean? And it was a bit like, you know, like people look down on you a little bit, but, you know, to their credit, I really feel like, you know, One Day Sundays was the event that helped bridge a lot of that.
The lesson. 927. Oh, yeah.